From rivers of trash to coffin homes and giant ghost cities, today we'll be exploring the world's worst examples of urban hell, and each one is more extreme than the last. Starting with the dark underbelly of Dubai. Today, Dubai is known as the Las Vegas of the Middle East, a metropolis of glittering skyscrapers and beautiful sandy beaches. But as we'll see, the city has a dark secret. And before it became a concrete jungle, it was a much quieter place. See that Toyota building there? Well, this is what it looked like just 50 years ago in 1981. The Nasser Rashid Luta building was originally built in 1974, and these images depict how the nearby Sheikh Zayed Road has developed from a 2-lane street through the barren Arabian desert to a 12-lane highway lined with skyscrapers. Today, the city around the building looks very different, and Dubai's breakneck development can be traced back to 1966, when the Fatah oil field was discovered 60 miles offshore.
I struck oil! I struck oil! La, 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 la.
This liquid gold flooded the city with wealth, and the rapid construction of buildings in the late 90s and 2000s turned Dubai into a major tourist attraction and trading center. As we'll see later, some of these developments are pretty hellish, and much of Dubai's construction boom was supported by wage slavery. Construction workers are brought over from countries in Asia to build the luxury buildings for just $40 a month. But when they arrive, their bosses often refuse to pay them, and they confiscate their passports, giving them no way to get home. Far from the glitz and glamour of central Dubai, the migrants typically live in cramped labor camps with multiple workers sharing one bedroom. Furthermore, temperatures in Dubai can reach up to 122 degrees, and due to a lack of health and safety regulations, working in these conditions has led to an incredibly high rate of accidents and heat stroke on construction sites. In fact, an estimated 10,000 migrant workers die in the entire Gulf region every year. Human Rights Watch has noted that lots of the laborers are too afraid of violence to protest. So some of them have no option but to flee Dubai and live in slums in the nearby emirate of Sharjah instead. So although Dubai looks like paradise at a glance, the metropolis has been built on the back of modern slavery. And these influencers are snapping their pics just a short drive away from genuine labor camps. Doesn't get much more hellish than that. When it comes to urban jungles, you can't beat Hong Kong, the city with the most skyscrapers in the world and some of the smallest apartments. An influx of settlers in the 1960s led to rapid development, and Hong Kong's green pastures were quickly filled up by over 550 skyscrapers and multiple shipping ports. The population has increased from 3 million in the 60s to 7.5 million today. But since the topography of Hong Kong is both mountainous and coastal, they were forced to build upwards, resulting in a city that's unbelievably dense. Today, Hong Kong has major trading links, great food, and it's one of the richest cities in the world. But over 220,000 of its residents live in cramped, subdivided apartments in complexes like the Monster Building. This is a large housing block that consists of 5 connecting buildings with over 2,400 apartment units. But it has a population between 6,800 and 10,000 residents, so many of the apartments have been split up into multiple coffin homes that are just 2 feet wide and 5 feet 7 inches long. These shoebox rooms boast dirty walls, no windows, and a lack of proper ventilation. Some of them don't even have walls, and the tenant is forced to live inside a literal cage. But the residents have to try and fit all their possessions into the space, as they're surrounded by bed bugs and 20 other tenants who all share one toilet between them. There are buildings like this all over Hong Kong, but the Monster Building was specifically designed to be the city's cheapest housing estate when the population boomed in the 60s. However, Hong Kong is now so expensive that these rooms can go for over $300 a month. And this high cost of living means that around 1 in 5 Hong Kongers are living in poverty. The coffin homes can often be found a stone's throw away from Hong Kong's most luxurious neighborhoods, and the city is often considered one of the most unequal in the world. So while tourists love taking TikToks and Instapics outside the monster building, it's proof that Hong Kong isn't so glamorous. And for thousands of people, life in the luxurious city is a living hell. The inferno that ravaged Wang Fu Court in Tai Po District on November 26, 2025, now the deadliest blaze in decades in Hong Kong, has exposed the darkest undercurrents of what many call life in a modern-day urban hell. Authorities believe the flames spread rapidly due to gross negligence by the construction firm handling ongoing renovation as flames tore through high-rise blocks at lightning speed, aided by bamboo scaffolding, plastic netting, and reportedly flammable foam-sealed windows. The fire trapped hundreds of residents in cramped towers, a reminder of how tightly packed, poorly insulated buildings can turn lethal. The disaster has provoked widespread anger and alarm over building safety standards, especially in high-density housing, with many calling for major reforms in regulation and enforcement to prevent a tragedy like this from ever happening again. 3 men linked to the construction contractor, 2 directors and a consultant have been arrested on suspicion of manslaughter for this negligence. With at least 120 lives lost, dozens injured, and nearly 300 unaccounted for from reports, the tragedy lays bare the structural and regulatory failures lurking beneath the city's gleaming skyline. If I said I was moving to a villa community, you'd probably picture a fancy little village in Europe. But in Dubai, their efforts to expand the city as quickly as possible has resulted in copy and pasted communities like Nad Al Sheba 3. It boasts over 1,570 homes in a 2.5 million square foot space. But they're virtually identical, and the only distinction between one block of villas and the next are slightly different paint colors. The soulless suburb was completed in 2019, and it looks like it was created in The Sims. But the gated community has everything the residents need, from a store to schools and a mall. So once you arrive in Al Sheba 3, you never have to leave, which is definitely for the best. Good luck getting out of that concrete maze or finding your own house at night. Say hello to our brand new Scratch Effect calendar. It isn't your average calendar, this one's packed with hundreds of fun facts. Each day, scratch off to reveal a brand new amazing fact that'll blow your mind. From wild history tidbits to quirky trivia, you'll have something new to look forward to every single day. But wait, there's more. Each page is bursting with stunning hand-drawn illustrations of Bartholomew's adventures over the seasons. It's an immersive work of art, and it's the perfect gift for your friends and family that everyone can enjoy each and every day. So why settle for a boring 2026 calendar when you can have the Be Amazed Scratch Effect calendar? Al Sheba 3 is unsettling, but at least people actually live in the copycat community, unlike the empty apartments in China's ghost cities. See, even though the country has a population of over 1.4 billion people, China has an estimated 50 empty cities, with high-rises that are abandoned and often unfinished. As we'll learn, most cities struggle with overpopulation, but these cities have the opposite problem. So how did this happen? Well, as China's population has rocketed, the government have made plans to build new cities to urbanize certain parts of China and attract people from rural areas to the city life. One such development was Kangbashi, located in the Chinese division of Ordos in Inner Mongolia. In the early 2000s, there was a huge coal boom in the area, so developers wanted to use the profits to build a new city for 1 million workers to live in, allowing the industry to grow even further. By 2003, construction of the 90,000-acre development was underway, but it didn't go to plan. They thought that if they threw loads of cash at the project and built the skyscrapers, people from the nearby city of Dongxing would naturally move in to be closer to the coal industry. They even built parks, monuments, and a new center for culture, entertainment, and politics, as they expected the city to thrive once it was finished. But the city was built so quickly that the developers cut corners, and by 2010, the poor quality of the construction and the high property taxes meant that many people continued to stay put in the countryside rather than gamble a move to a new town. Around $161 billion was spent on developing the city, but nowadays it's home to just 150,000 people, leaving roughly 80 to 90% of its skyscrapers and apartment blocks empty. The people who actually do live there are mostly construction workers and government officials who are clearly too stubborn to accept that their pop-up city was a massive failure. In their defense, Kangbashi isn't a special case, and it's estimated that there's over 50 million abandoned apartments across China. So theoretically, you could move the entire population of Spain into the country's ghost cities and have about 2 million apartments left to spare. The problem is so big that it'll be near impossible to fix. But I have an obvious solution: turning Kangbashi into a giant city-sized paintball arena. Living in a diamond city probably sounds pretty glamorous. But in the Russian town of Mirny, diamonds have created an urban hellscape. 40,000 people live here in the freezing cold region of Siberia, 280 miles from the Arctic Circle. But while the city doesn't have ugly skyscrapers or a factory-filled skyline, it does circle around a giant pit mine that looks like a tunnel to hell. The Mir Diamond Mine has produced 200 million carats of diamond since it first opened in the 1950s, and it's actually the second largest man-made pit in the world, at over 1,700 feet deep and almost 4,000 feet wide. It yields around 1 million tons of diamonds per year, and 70% of Mirny's population work for the Alrosa Mining Company. But it's also been home to some deadly accidents. In 2017, the mine flooded as an underground water cavern collapsed into the mine shaft. 142 workers were trapped inside the hole, and after a lengthy rescue operation, 8 of them never resurfaced. It's estimated that up to $14 billion worth of unrecovered diamonds were buried underneath the water. So despite the danger, the mine was reopened in 2025, and the largest diamond ever discovered in Russia was found soon after. Most of Mirny's population are forced to live next to and work in the deadly mine due to a lack of other opportunities. But apart from that, it's a great place to live. Not. The weather conditions in Siberia are often extreme, and Mirny's been known to reach negative 50 degrees in the winter. So if you're not perishing in a mine, you're freezing to death. And this diamond city definitely isn't on my list of vacation destinations. Mirny isn't the only town that's been destroyed by industry. But before we get to that, let's move from Russia to Hangzhou, China. A city with futuristic architecture, ancient temples, and this giant vehicle graveyard containing thousands of cars. It looks like something from a zombie movie, but the mass grave was discovered in Hangzhou's outskirts in 2021, and the cars were abandoned by their own manufacturer.
I mean, it's like a betrayal, really.
In 2018, the automobile manufacturer Lifan wanted to launch autonomous robo-taxis through their subsidiary company Panda Auto, a rideshare service that operates similarly to Uber. Panda Auto already operated in 12 Chinese cities and had 4 million users, so it was pretty successful. But their move to Lifan's new electric autonomous cars would lead to their downfall. See, these cars hadn't been tested yet, and when they were trialed in the city of Changchun, all the vehicles experienced severe technological failures. Lifan had invested a lot into the project, but they couldn't get the cars to work. So in August 2020, they were forced to file bankruptcy after selling just 382 vehicles from January to July and running up to $4.4 billion in debt. When Lifan went kaput, Panda Auto ran out of money and had to declare bankruptcy too, which meant there were now thousands of brand new faulty cars left with no one to drive them. This sounds like a nightmare situation, but for Lifan it was no big deal. Clearly, the easiest option was to just abandon them all in a field outside of Hangzhou, making their failure somebody else's problem. Whilst Panda Auto has yet to recover, Lifan was bought out by the auto manufacturer Geely and they're now starting to produce electric vehicles that actually work. But in a textbook case of capitalist greed, they haven't bothered to clean up the mess they created, allowing nature to take over the old vehicles and transform the graveyard into a menacing mechanical garden. If you've ever lived next to a busy road, you'll know that trying to sleep through the engine's horns and exhaust fumes is near impossible. But that's nothing compared to living in this apartment building in Naples, Italy that sits directly underneath the Tangenziale di Napoli. The 3-lane highway takes drivers from the city of Pozzuoli to Naples Airport, and it's one of the most congested roads in Italy, carrying 270,000 vehicles every day. The homes in these buildings hear them all, as they're practically wedged between the ground and the freeway, with the cars driving directly over their roofs. This highway made its debut in 1972, but many of the historic houses in Naples were built years or even hundreds of years before the highway came into existence. So the road was deliberately built like that, as the city planners decided that the best place for it was directly on top of the Neapolitan locals. If that wasn't bad enough, the Shakuzi Bridge in Guiyang, China was built in 1997, and the apartments underneath it were built 2 years later in 1999. So these apartments were designed to sit under the road, but residents have said that their rooms constantly tremble and they have to plug their ears with cotton wool at night. Man, I need my beauty sleep, and all the beeping and screeching would drive me absolutely insane.
I didn't get no sleep because of y'all. Y'all not gonna get no sleep because of me.
But China is known for its wacky roads, like this sky-high highway in Changchun that forms part of the 20-road Huangshui-Wan interchange. Its 5 levels stretch 120 feet above the ground below, with roads leading in 8 different directions. After 8 years of construction, it was finally opened in 2017, connecting the city to the airport. But whilst its layout was designed to help the flow of traffic, it's mostly ended up confusing people. Drivers and GPS systems alike have been completely thrown by the amount of lanes and roads, and it's not uncommon to try and leave the highway and find yourself driving down the completely wrong exit. Let's warm our bones with a trip to the beach in Canada. Canada is better known for its snow-capped mountains than its beaches, and when you look at Burlington Beach in Ontario, it's clear to see why. When the sun comes out in summer, locals flock to Lake Ontario to splash around, surrounded by power lines, transmission towers, and an industrial bridge. It looks more like Chernobyl than the Bahamas, and to make matters worse, the beach is a natural breeding site for 17 species of birds who regularly collide with the power lines and crash into the water below. Swimming while surrounded by concrete and bird carcasses isn't very summery, but some people have proposed moving the power lines underground to fix the issue. However, this would cost at least $150 million, and so far, the government have been reluctant to cough up the cash. So if you go to Canada, I'd stick to the poutine, hockey, and skiing and avoid the beach altogether. In Istanbul, Turkey, the local government actually did allow a renovation to go up along the coast, but it came with a price. In 2018, 4 high-rise buildings were constructed with 630 new apartments overlooking the Marmara Sea. But unfortunately, they stood directly in front of these cheaper residential houses, completely blocking their view of the ocean. If that wasn't bad enough, the apartment blocks were developed further into a full-on tourism complex called the Sea Pearl Istanbul, with a 5-star hotel, restaurants, and a shopping mall. Suddenly, these cozy coastal homes were completely blocked off from the water and surrounded by a giant construction site, which massively reduced the value of their homes. The development was created by Qatari Diyar, a real estate company that's owned by Qatar's government, and the tourism complex will earn them millions. But the Turkish locals are the ones who are paying the price, and I'd be furious if my coastal view was blocked like this. Hopefully someone else builds more apartments in front of those tower blocks. That'll show them. Unfortunately, Hatakoi isn't the only place where a seaside community has been destroyed in the name of profit. Hat Ba Island in Vietnam is known for its rainforest, wildlife, and beautiful beaches. But since 2017, developers have transformed it into an urban hell by turning the island's largest bay into a 110-acre construction site. This is part of a $3 billion project that's attempting to turn the quaint island into a resort by filling in the ocean to make space for hotels, an amusement park, and 3 golf courses. Now, I like an all-inclusive hotel as much as anyone, but the project is clearly destroying the natural scenery, and to make matters worse, Cat Ba is recognized as a biosphere reserve, meaning that it's home to rare animals and plants. The Cat Ba langur is one of the rarest primate species in the world, with just 70 remaining on the island. But in recent years, all of the noise and pollution from work sites and tourist boats has put the remaining langurs under extreme stress and caused them to retreat into their caves. The construction should be complete within a year or two, so it won't be long before we find out how much damage this artificial playground has done to the island. But locals have noted that most tourists visited Cat Ba for its bays and beaches, so destroying them might make the island a less popular destination. Great work, guys. You paved over a biosphere reserve for absolutely no reason. There's nothing worse than getting stuck in traffic, and 10 minutes of gridlock is enough to put anyone in a bad mood. But be grateful that your morning commute doesn't involve this highway in China, where the longest traffic jam took 12 whole days to clear. In August 2010, drivers on China's National Highway 110 faced a queue that broke the record for the longest of all time, spanning 62 miles between the province of Hubei and Inner Mongolia. The road has 50 lanes, but the majority of drivers were only able to crawl half a mile per day, which forced them to sleep and eat inside their cars. Shrewd businessmen saw this urban nightmare as a money-making opportunity by selling water, noodles, and cigarettes that drivers had hiked up prices. 1 yuan bottles of water were sold for 15 yuan, and some cars were even robbed in the middle of the night as criminals snuck up to them and siphoned all their gas. So what led to this disastrous bottleneck? Well, in the 90s and 2000s, vehicle ownership became more and more common in China, and the 110 saw a 40% increase in traffic annually. In fact, by 2010, it regularly had 60% more traffic than its maximum capacity. Fast forward to August, and coal trucks from Inner Mongolia crowded the motorway due to a lack of railway routes in the area. Then nearby roadworks forced more cars onto the same route, so this combined with the road's regular commuters to create a gridlock of epic proportions that wasn't cleared for almost 2 weeks. If China is so reliant on cars that a 50-lane highway isn't enough to handle them all, they might need to rethink some things. And if 2-week traffic jams become the norm, we need to come up with some better in-car entertainment than I Spy. In China's defense, traffic is a global issue, and one of the most consistently busy highways in the world is actually located in the U.S. The Interstate 405 in Los Angeles is just 73 miles long, but it links West LA to the San Fernando Valley and connects with hotspots like Beverly Hills, Mulholland Drive, and Santa Monica. So it's one of the most congested roads on the planet, but the area around the freeway is also prime real estate. The city is constantly building new apartments right by the road, but the I-405 carries 385,000 cars every day, and the exhaust fumes this kicks up are incredibly dangerous. People who live by the freeway suffer much higher rates of heart attacks, strokes, and lung cancer, to name a few. But despite this, the city continues to issue building permits for new homes by the freeway due to pressure from LA's elite who don't want construction in the nicer, less polluted parts of the city that they live in. This is putting millions of Angelenos in danger, and it's making the traffic in LA even worse by putting more cars on the freeway. LA traffic has become a joke worldwide, and some viral photos of the I-405 have been found to be photoshopped to make the issue appear even more extreme than it is. But that's hardly necessary, as the 12-lane freeway is set to be expanded in the future, putting more deadly fumes into the air and ensuring any trip through LA will be the worst ride you ever take. Couldn't you guys just, I don't know, build some trains? Getting stuck on the freeway is boring, but at least the traffic goes so slowly that there's little risk of a collision. Other roads are more hectic, and in 2019, flooding caused this insane traffic jam in Hanoi, Vietnam. The flood submerged lots of the other roads in this neighborhood, forcing hundreds of drivers towards the same junction. This ended in a total free-for-all as they tried to push past each other to get to their destination. One internet user noted that in Hanoi, motorbike riders often ignore traffic lights due to a lack of repercussions, which can cause jams like this as vehicles traveling in opposite directions get trapped. In 2025, the government tripled the fine for running a red light, which could help the issue, but this came too late for these poor souls in 2019. And it's safe to say that nobody got to work on time that day. Lots of places fight to be considered the prettiest city in the world, but Charleroi in Belgium has the distinct honor of being known as the ugliest. And depressingly, the city's economy is kept afloat by its reputation as a warped tourist attraction. Whilst the center is okay, huge parts of the city are dominated by its giant abandoned factory complex that reveals the ugly decline of Charleroi's once booming coal and steel industry. Charleroi was the place to be during the Industrial Revolution of the 19th century, but by the 1950s its coal factories couldn't compete with the increasing use of oil, and most of them were left to rot and rust away. Steel production continued for a while, but the global financial crisis in the 2000s finally killed it off for good, and the giant Cockerell Steelwork factory shut down in 2012. This has had a huge impact on the rest of the city, and today the unemployment rate for Charleroi 200,000 residents is a whopping 20%, much higher than Belgium's 6% national average. But incredibly, some residents have turned to tourism to make money. Guided tours take groups around the dilapidated factories and along the ugliest road in Belgium, the Rue de Mans. Another hotspot is the city's abandoned metro stations that are now filled with graffiti and trash from the vandals who use the space for their own leisure. This quaint picnic beside a brown metal skyline looks like a scene from a dystopian TV show, but school kids and travel enthusiasts regularly rock up to Charleroi for the worst-looking scenic tour of their life. Some guides even take stag do's to the Cockerell Steelworks, hosting discos inside the skeletons of Charleroi's once booming factories. Man, I know a lot of cities rely on tourism, but if making money by showing off how ugly your city is an urban hell, I don't know what is.
No, thank you. No, thank you. No, thank you.
The problem with cities is living surrounded by concrete and cars is completely unnatural. So lots of governments try to make their cities greener by filling them with trees, flowers, and plants. Unfortunately, not everyone gets the memo, and these plastic trees in the streets of Al Qasim, Saudi Arabia, aren't helping anyone.
Okay.
Apparently, the local government wanted their city to be greener, but the area lacks water resources, so they went with the plastic option instead. But critics have noted that planting real trees that don't require a lot of water isn't difficult, and it's also cheaper than manufacturing artificial ones. So, along with being ugly and ecologically unsustainable, these abominations are also a huge waste of money and resources. Saudi Arabia isn't the only country that's experimented with fake foliage. In Belgrade, Serbia, tests on liquid trees took place in 2022. These Liquid 3 tanks are filled with 600 liters of water and microalgae, which takes in CO2 and produces oxygen through photosynthesis. This would help to improve the city's air quality, and researchers claim that microalgae are 10 to 50 times more efficient than trees at capturing carbon dioxide, but they still look pretty dystopian, and I hope cities around the world don't completely rely on this option instead of, just planting real trees. When I was a kid, there was nothing better than heading to the playground and going crazy on the swing sets and slides. But if I lived near this desolate play park in Berlin, Germany, I don't think I'd bother. I can't imagine any kid is excited about going on the single rocking horse, climbing frame, or train. But it's still better than this rooftop park in Rio de Janeiro. Hey, at least they put fences up so the tykes don't go sliding off the sides of the building. Doesn't get much better for our furry friends, and this dog park in rural America might just be the smallest one in the world. The idea of taking your pooch here to play is scarier than the neighboring Spirit Halloween, and look at that, the grass isn't even real. Apparently, the realty company Kimco creates these tiny dog parks outside of vets and pet stores, and depressingly, they're usually located inside giant parking lots. Come on, guys, is your car really more important than your beloved dog? Go fetch, boy! They say that when you buy a house, the most important thing to consider is location, location, location. So moving to a global city like Taipei or New York seems like a no-brainer. But when these unlucky people arrived at their new apartments and looked out the window, they definitely second-guessed their decision. These balconies in Taipei, Taiwan look like bird cages, and although the fencing is put there for safety, it looks like it's stopping the residents from escaping their tiny apartments. Some of Taipei's neighborhoods are the most densely populated in the world, with up to 100,000 people living in 1 square mile. But New York isn't much better, and although living in Manhattan sounds glamorous, lots of the apartments come with views like this. In the late 19th century, the population of New York boomed, so the government passed a law in 1879 that said every habitable room had to have a window that opened to plain air. It was a good idea, but as the city became more compacted, the plain air was often just a direct view into a neighboring apartment complex.
Oh my God! There's an unattractive nude man playing the cello.
Still, it could be worse, and I'd rather have a view of a brick wall than a power station. The Hotel Alica in Łódź, Poland looks lovely on Trivago, but when guests arrive, they'll find that it's just a few feet away from the giant EC2 coal power plant. Talk about a room with a view. Unsurprisingly, the hotel has received accusations of false advertising, and whilst the power station hasn't operated since 2015, its cooling tower still isn't the best backdrop for your vacation pics. Still, Alica has actually received some good reviews, and they've recently undergone a modern redesign to draw in more customers. Hey, at least EC2 is closed and you don't actually get wafts of coal fumes along with your continental breakfast. One of the worst parts of modern life is that we're constantly being advertised to. I can't step foot out of my apartment without being marketed fast food, clothes, and perfume. But this side street in Hyderabad, India, takes it to another level. Damn, and I thought Times Square was bad. The collage of colors is overwhelming as each individual ad gets lost in the noise. But all this visual pollution is still better than actual pollution, and it's nothing compared to the state of this bridge in Dhaka, Bangladesh. Surrounded by dirt and filth on every side, the canal under the bridge has slowly turned into a river of trash. This is a genuine snapshot of everyday life in some parts of Dhaka, but urban hell can exist on a much smaller scale. The award for worst building in our ghoulish gallery has to go to this house in Portland, Oregon. It looks like a face that's been beaten up and needs to spend some time in residential rehab. But for decades it's been occupied by students of the nearby Reed College. On the flip side, this replica of the White House in Bangalore, India is luxurious, but it's equally ghoulish considering the wealth inequality in the city. It was built by the Indian businessman Vijay Mallya in the 2010s, and the $20 million, 400,000 square foot mansion includes an infinity pool, gardens, and a helipad. Oh, and it sits on top of the 400-foot Kingfisher Towers. In the city below, 16% of the population live in slums with no clean water, sanitation, or electricity. So building a monument to your personal wealth on an ivory tower is pretty disturbing. To make matters worse, while the house was almost finished in 2016, Mallya was accused of fraud and defaulting on $1 billion of loans. So he fled to the UK, leaving the mansion completely empty and technically still incomplete. Nice one, Vijay. Maybe you should have considered using that money to help people instead. China is undoubtedly the king of crazy construction. But like your drunk uncle at Thanksgiving, they just don't know when they've taken it too far. This 3-story bridge is located in the Shanxi province on the top of the 4,500-foot-tall Tianlong Mountain. The bridge was debuted to the public in May 2019 after being constructed from 7,700 tons of steel, and its final form was 1,148 feet tall. That's taller than the Eiffel Tower. It forms part of the 18-mile Tianlongshan Highway, which is aptly nicknamed the Highway Above the Clouds. The bridge is a new addition, and driving on its vertical drops and loops has been compared to riding a roller coaster. Lots of people think the bridge looks awesome, but critics have noted that the Tianlong Mountain is one of the most naturally beautiful parts of China, and the government has essentially built a $100 million Hot Wheels racetrack right in the middle of it. The bridge was designed to stand out as much as possible, and it's definitely an eyesore. But knowing China, I'm surprised they stopped at 3 levels. Why not keep adding more and turn this roller coaster into a highway to hell? And why not check out all our other amazing products and bundles at the lowest price they'll ever be? But hurry, because this discount is only for a very limited time. All items are designed with love by us, and every purchase you make directly funds what we do here on this channel. So hurry, don't miss out on this savings. Scan the QR code on screen or click the link in the description to purchase this bundle of joy while stocks last. So which one of these awful locations shocked you the most? Let me know in the comments below, and if you want to see some more hellish locations on Earth, check out my video on the most dangerous cities around the world. Thanks for watching.